Hi, this is a message to all students, ancient and European, for Friday, the 20th of November, 2020. Your assignments in European history are to watch the clips I have set up for you from the movie Marie Antoinette that talks about and depict really well Versailles culture. Now, this is like the Last Emperor scenes that we saw. It's filmed on location at Versailles Palace, with costumes left over from the time as the guide for the costumes for the movie, with the aid of scholars of the period of Louis XVI and biographers of Marie Antoinette. So it's as authentic in those ways as authentic can be. Watch closely. Ancient students, you're going to be concluding the Odyssey. You're going to be watching the last 2 days of the story, so to speak. So finish up. Your movie worksheet will be due by 6 a.m. the Wednesday after we get back from break. So if you have it done in paper form, turn it in on Monday or Tuesday, or get me an online version before 6 a.m. that Wednesday. There need be no commentary on this video. Just if you're in European, watch the clips, learn from them, take what notes you should. And if you're in ancient, finish the movie worksheet. That's all I have for the lesson. However, I do have a Thanksgiving present. You don't have to accept it, but if you do, it is a Thanksgiving history that is rarely taught today in schools. It's as told by the conservative commentator Rush Limbaugh. So it's a conservative take on some of Thanksgiving's history. Anyway, my plan is, weather permitting, to read it to you and to offer this lesson to you as a Thanksgiving present. If you choose to take it, listen further. If you don't, then enjoy your ignorance. This is from Rush Limbaugh's radio show on November the 21st, 2007. Now, the real story of Thanksgiving. On August the 1st, 1620, the Mayflower set sail. It carried a total of 102 passengers, including 40 pilgrims led by William Bradford. On the journey, Bradford set up an agreement, a contract, that established just and equal laws for all members of this new community, irrespective of their religious beliefs. Where did this revolutionary idea come from? The ideas expressed in the Mayflower Compact? Well, they came from the Bible. The Pilgrims, you see, were a people completely steeped in the lessons of the Old and New Testaments. They looked to the ancient Israelites for their example. And because of the biblical precedent set forth in Scripture, they never doubted that their experiment would work. But this was no pleasure cruise. The journey to the New World was long and hard, and when the Pilgrims landed in New England in November, they found, according to Bradford's detailed journal, a cold, barren, desolate wilderness. There were no friends to greet them. He wrote, there were no houses to shelter them, there were no inns where they could refresh themselves, and the sacrifices that they were making for religious freedom were just beginning. During this first winter, half of the pilgrims, including Bradford's own wife, died of either starvation, sickness, or exposure. When spring finally came, Indians taught the settlers how to plant corn, fish for cod, and skin beavers for coats. Life improved for the Pilgrims, but they still did not yet prosper. This is important to understand, because this is where many modern American history lessons end. Thanksgiving is actually explained in some textbooks as a holiday for which the Pilgrims gave thanks to the Indians for saving their lives, rather than as a devout expression of gratitude grounded in the traditions of both the Old and New Testaments. Here is the part that has been omitted. The original contract the Pilgrims had entered into with their merchant sponsors in London called for everything they produced to go into a common store, and every member of that community was entitled to one common share. All of the land they cleared and all of the houses they built belonged to the community as well. Bradford, who had become the new governor of the colony, recognized that this form of collectivism was as costly and destructive to the Pilgrims as their first harsh winter, which had taken so many lives. He decided to take bold action. Bradford assigned a plot of land to each family to work and manage, thus turning loose the power of the marketplace. Long before Karl Marx was even born, the Pilgrims had discovered and experimented with what could only be described as socialism. And what happened? It didn't work. Surprise, surprise. What Bradford and his community found was that the most creative and industrious people had no incentive to work any harder than anyone else. Unless they could utilize the power of personal motivation, the colony would stagnate and die. But while most of the rest of the world has been experimenting with socialism for well over 100 years, trying to refine it, perfect it, and reinvent it, the Pilgrims decided early on to scrap it permanently. What Bradford wrote about, this social experiment, should be in every school child's history lesson, for if it were, we might prevent much needless suffering in the future. Here's what he wrote, and I quote, from Bradford, not from Limbaugh. The experience that we had in this common course and condition tried sundry years, that by taking away property and bringing community into a commonwealth would make everyone happy and flourishing, as if we were wiser than God. For this community, so far as it was found to breed much confusion and discontent, and to retard much employment that would have been to the benefit of all. For young men that were most able and fit for labor and service did repine that they should spend their time and strength to work for other men's wives and other men's children, without any recompense to themselves. This was thought injustice." Unquote. Limbaugh continues. Do you hear what he was saying? The Pilgrims found that people could not be expected to do their best work without incentive. So what did Bradford's community try next? They unharnessed the power of good old-fashioned free market enterprise by invoking the undergirding capitalistic principle of private property. Every family was assigned its own plot of land to work and permitted to market its own crops and products. What was the result? Quote, "This has been a very great success," wrote Bradford, "for it made all hands industrious, so as much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been. The profits allowed them to pay off their debts to the merchantmen in London, and the success and prosperity of the Plymouth settlement attracted more Europeans and began what came to be known as the Great Puritan Migration." Now, aside from this lesson, have you heard this before? Is this being taught in schools? If not, why not? I mean, is there a more important lesson one could derive from the Pilgrim experiences than this? So, the Pilgrims decided to thank God for all their good fortune, and that's Thanksgiving. Read George Washington's first Thanksgiving address, and count the number of times God is mentioned, and how many times He is thanked. None of this is taught today. It should be. Have a happy Thanksgiving. You deserve it. Do what you can to be happy, and especially do what you can to be thankful. Because in this country you have more reasons to be thankful than you've ever stopped to consider. Thus Limbaugh ends, and thus I will end, wishing you that same Thanksgiving wish. Have a great week off. You deserve it. See you the following week. Happy Thanksgiving.